Today I'm going to be installing a Evolution Compact by Insinkerator in replace of this roughly 30-year-old garbage disposal. This one is got a dishwasher connected on the opposite side, so we're not going to have to worry about connecting that one in. The first thing I like to do after clearing out most of the crap that's under most people's sink is get any of these trash can things out of the way. The more space that you have underneath the sink to work is just going to make your life easier. So spend a little extra time here and just get everything cleared out. These things, usually just have a couple screws in them. They're not hard to take out. It doesn't take much time, and it'll make your life a little easier once you get down to the installation. So before you install it, you want to be safe, and if you're not familiar with these things, especially, you want to turn off the circuit breaker and probably even check power with a voltage pen if you need to. I work in this place and I'm very confident in my breaker panel system, and also that the switch is off at the wall, so I'm not really worried about the power. But after you get the power off, you can just start disassembling this thing. I start with the P-trap. And this is a plastic one. There's really not a whole lot of need for tools. If it is really tight or you can't get a good angle on it, you might want to use channel lock pliers. But I was able to free this one up pretty easily. So I usually go pretty slow on this. Sometimes if the pipes are back graded a little bit, there can be quite a bit of water in here. So I have off camera, there's a little Tupperware underneath here catching the water. Once you get one side loosened up, then the other side should come out pretty easily. This one was actually a little bit tighter here, so I'm gonna have to use two hands here. I get more leverage with my thumbs, and then I push in opposite directions, lefty loosey. This will get your top piece disconnected, and once it's loose, it should just slide out. You don't need to take the thing out all the way. I'm gonna be reusing this trap because it's in pretty good condition, and I'm putting the exact same thing, pretty much the updated exact same thing, back in place. Taking the disposal down now, just a matter of using something to twist the top locking ring off. And once the locking ring's off, you can just set your garbage disposal down and work on the electrical. I prefer to work on the electrical with the disposal laying down on the ground. It's a little easier for me than working underneath it. It's a personal preference. Let me know in the comments if you guys do disposals. What do you guys like to do? Do you like to do the electrical while it's hanging up? A lot of people's is also plugged in. It might be a little easier. So there's a Phillips head screw here that is going to reveal access to the little junction area underneath the garbage disposal. And on this one, there is only two connections because we're using some metal cable, which serves as the ground for it. So you don't have to do a ground on this one. Let me know also if that's something that you electricians frown upon. But yeah, there's no ground on this one, so we're not going to worry about that. Once you get your wires out, you do have to fish them out a little bit. Disconnect both the black and the white, and in order to remove the metal cable from the conduit. If you have a plug-in style, you can probably disregard this. The new one's going to come with a plug, at least on the one that I buy. If you do need to reuse the plug, you'd have to do a similar process like this to uninstall it so that you could get the plug. So I'm going to take the screws on the armored cable connector or the BX connector and loosen them up a little bit. I'm not going to take them out all the way. Just saves a little bit of time. I know I can fish the wires out if I bend them a little bit, which you'll see here in a minute. So I'm just going to go ahead and loosen these things up. Not quite all the way, but maybe about 70 to 80% of the way. And then I'll start stuffing the solid wires back into it a little bit, and then just kind of wiggle them free. I'm also not sure in this box if it comes with a new connector, so I'm going to go ahead and take this old connector out so I can reuse it on the new disposal. I think the packaging ended up coming with a new one. So once you get the wires disconnected and the plumbing disconnected, just set your garbage disposal off to the side. You can throw it away. I typically just put it up into the sink until I'm finished with the job. So I'm going to grab my new disposal here and start unboxing it and see what is inside. This one, it came with a couple things that I'm not going to end up using here. If you have a leak coming from the top part of the sink, you may want to replace that piece, which I'm not going to include in this video. Basically, there are 3 screws that secure it, and you just unscrew those things and you drop the gasket in there, and there's some instructions on how to do it. But 90% of the time, that thing is not the problem, and I've had them last over 50 years. I typically don't replace them unless I need to. So we'll take our disposal out. This is a 3/4 horsepower with a 9-year warranty, and it is a very high-end garbage disposal because it's really quiet. This was a high-end unit, and they want the best in this thing. So also, if you're trying to replace a garbage disposal that is already a thick, quiet style, and you go back with a thin one, like a cheaper, you know, Badger style, or Maintenance Warehouse one, it won't always line up with the pipes. Here's the cap that you need to bust out if you're going to connect your dishwasher into it. You just take a screwdriver and pop that cap out and then fish it out from inside. But I don't have to do that here because the dishwasher is hooked up for some reason on the other side, and there wasn't enough slack to move it over, so I'm not even going to bother with it. So the same way that the old one came out is the same way that I'm going to set up my new one. For me, again, it's easier to do the electrical connections from underneath. So one screw will pop this tab out, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my wires free. Take my wire connector, just thread it back in. It doesn't have to be super tight here. You want to be able to turn the screws, so keep the screws pointing in a way that's easy for your screwdriver to get to them. And then here, it's not a whole lot of tricks with this thing, but if you have solid wire and you bend the wires a little bit first, which you'll see me do here in a minute, I think I'm gonna have to take them back out. It'll help you to slide them into there, and it's just a bit finicky sometimes to fish this thing in here because he's got such a small thing. So here we go. I'm gonna bend a little U-turn in them. It's a little trick to help get them in there if you've got solid wires. So get that U-turn and then you kind of fish them in, and then I'm gonna grab a pair of pliers here and I'll start fiddling with the pliers so that I can you know, pull the whole wire through. You really want to get the BX connector all the way, or you want to get the wire all the way in the connector, because that little red piece off to the right there, that is I call it red head, and that shields the insulation on the wire from getting stripped by the connector or by the conduit. So you want to make sure you pull these things all the way through. Take a lot of time and get this thing all the way in there, because you are going to have some vibration on a garbage disposal, and you want to make sure that it's properly done. So once the wires are in place, all you have to do is reconnect your wire nuts. But we'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so I've got the wire fully inserted. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten down my screws on this. You can get pretty tight on this. It doesn't have to be crazy. You just wanna make sure that it's not gonna come loose. So, you know, go on both screws here and just snug them up before you connect your wire nuts. Depending on your code or your county, I mean, they may require you to put some like liquid tight wire nuts or some electrical tape or something on these things. I've never seen it here in Maryland where I am, and I've never had a problem with it. After I put my wire nuts on, I don't even bother with pliers to pre-twist them. These wires never have been an issue for me. What I will do is I will point the wire nuts facing up, so that if water does leak out of the disposal, at least the wire nuts will be kind of like a umbrella for the wires, and you know, they'll not get wet like that. So you see here, I kind of point them up, and then you just gotta stuff everything in the box. You know, sometimes it's a little easier than other times. If you have a ground wire on yours, make sure you connect the ground wire before you do this. That's that green screw in there. It would just be one extra step. Don't take this screw all the way out, you know, just leave it in there, and that way all you have to do is just give it a couple little turns and that'll tighten the plate. Then we're ready to put the garbage disposal up in place. Now this will help if you have 2 people, if you're not used to doing this. Basically, I'm using my elbow sort of on the base of the cabinet in order to support this thing while I line up these guides. You have to get all 3 guides in place before you start twisting it. So right here, I've got all 3 guides in, and this is just from experience. I've done this a lot, and I know that they felt very smooth, but you want it to feel very smooth. It should not feel rough when you put this thing up. After you get them in place, you can use the key that came with the garbage disposal or the same screwdriver that you used to take it down just to snug them up. Now we're on to reconnecting the drain. I'm going to use this new, I don't know if they call it tail piece or what, but I'm going to use the new piece that came with it. And it's got a little locking ring on it to make things easy. If you put it in before you get under the sink, it can make your life a little bit easier. So just twist the disposal to the left here so that you can easily access this thing in order to install it. So just that goes right in there, and then clip this thing in place. It's pretty simple. Now, if you're reusing the trap, I would suggest that you try to clean up the gasket a little bit here. I didn't really get it very good on camera, but I did take the gasket apart and I cleaned it. You want the tapered edge pointing down. That's going to be what makes the seal here. You could add some pipe dope to help these threads go on a little smoother. This thing had some old plumber's putty on there or something. I didn't really feel like it was going to be necessary. Plastic traps are super forgiving. If you have a metal trap, you may want to consider replacing it. Sometimes they're not as easy to get in. Here, I typically wouldn't do this, but I did it on camera sort of so it was a little easier for you to see how I put that first connection on. But now I am going to connect my second piece here. So you want to loosen this up a little bit so that you'll have some play in order to get the trap in place. And the most important thing about this installation is not cross-threading in it. Very important here, do not cross-thread anything. If it's not going in easily, it's because it's not fitting. So take your time, make sure it lines up. You shouldn't really have to use any sort of pliers on plastic traps. Sometimes on metal traps, if they're a little corroded, you know, maybe a little Teflon tape, a little pipe dope or something will help you with that. And you may need to snug them up with a channel lock plier. But on plastic stuff, you really shouldn't be using any tools. It's almost never necessary. Once you start using that much force with plastic, you're probably going to be damaging something. So, and you can always tighten something more. But if you go too tight, sometimes you cannot undo it when it's too tight. So get everything snugged up and you're basically done. The last little piece is this splash guard. I'm just going to pop this in on the top here, and then you can run water and check for leaks. Get some water running and then run your hand down there or a paper towel on the connections that you disturbed. You could also leave a dry paper towel underneath and then you can check it the next day. Go ahead and turn your power back on at the breaker and you're ready to run the disposal. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to get better at editing these things. Appreciate you guys watching, and if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Thanks.